Coach Pete Carroll knows Seattle has much bigger problems than rainy days in the Emerald City. If his quarterback is injured, there's need for a backup and need for competition there. Pete Carroll and the team looking at former 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick and 2012 Offensive Rookie of the Year Robert Griffin III. Here's Carroll on his plans.
We're looking at everybody, really. We really are. We're looking. We've been tracking everything that's going on, and we have. We've got cap and roster issues and stuff like that we're still trying to make sure that we manage properly. But just quite frankly, yes, we are looking at all those guys.
All right, just a reminder, in 12 games last season, Cap completed 59% of his passes through 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Bill, you were a very successful GM. Would you sign Colin Kaepernick?
I would in this situation because with a couple of caveats. Number one, he's got to pass a physical. Number two, I'd want to sit down with him and say, are you okay being a backup quarterback here? Are you okay saying that this is the job that's going to lead to your next job as a starter? And if he is, and we could agree on the money, which I think probably won't be a problem at this stage, then I would sign him because he's had experience in the division. He's had experience at the highest level. He's been to a Super Bowl. And he, believe it or not, his QBR last year belied their record. He really played pretty well. Their problem was on defense last year, not him.
Yeah, so he fits in the system there. In terms of fitting in the locker room, Seattle, known for some loud players. We know Richard Sherman voices his concerns all the time. Do you think he fits in this locker room?
I'd say this, Diana. Just because a team has a willingness to take on large personalities, it doesn't mean that just every player fits into that locker room. It would require diligence on the Seahawks' part. If they brought Colin Kaepernick in a visit, it would probably be, the priority would be a physical and seeing where he's at with his health and everything, which is standard for any visit that takes place with a prospective free agent. You'd also have to figure out, though, does he mesh with the quarterback room, with Russell Wilson, who the two of them sort of squared off, not toe-to-toe, obviously, as quarterback versus quarterback, but the centerpiece of a roster for each team in the same division and the offensive staff. I think that's something that just because the team has a willingness to take on some players with baggage or checkered pasts, it doesn't mean that every player just automatically fits into this locker room and they just have this open door policy. No matter what you've done, you just fit.
Yeah, a reminder to the Seahawks players, they were among the most supportive of Kaepernick's national anthem protest last season. Even some of their own players knelt during the national anthem last season. Bill, you mentioned the scheme here. Is it actually important that the backup quarterback runs the same offense as the starter?
Well, you can look at it two ways. The offensive linemen want that to be the case. They don't want to have to adjust anything when the backup comes in. On the other hand, you can say, listen, if our backup is different in style than the guy who's the starter, we're making the opposition probably devote 10 plays a week to preparing for the backup.
Is that a lot, though?
That's a lot, yeah, sure. And so it can work both ways. In this situation, both RG3 and Cap have the same skill set as Russell, so that's not an issue at all.
All right, well then let's talk RG3 then. Field, do you think that RG3 can still play at this level?
That's a question mark. It honestly is, Diana. He flashed in the preseason last year, but once we got to the regular season, he didn't last long. I mean, that's the biggest issue with RG3. Physically, can he hold up? Can he be on the field for an extended period of time? And if this is a backup quarterback, you don't want a guy that you are already preparing a second contingency for because of his durability issues. You want a player that you can count on in a pinch. If he's starting 16 games, that right there is a problem on its own. If Russell Wilson, who is exceptionally durable, does miss any chunk of time, though, you want a player that you can count on to stay healthy for as long as he is out. And then you get to the football stuff, and I just think last year, if you look at how RG3 played, even in an abbreviated stint in Cleveland, there are major concerns about his ability specific to accuracy and decision-making, which are right at the very top in terms of importance of quarterback traits.
Bill, can you give me the requirements that you look for in a backup quarterback?
Yeah. Number one, you'd like him to be experienced, and you'd like him to be experienced at the highest level, hopefully a lot of playoff experience. Number two, you want him to be a fast learner and a quick processor because he's not going to get many reps. Number three, you want him to be a good teammate, a guy who's confident in his role and comfortable in his role. So he's not going to be nudging the other guy all the time. You can't compete with the number one guy. You got to prepare yourself to play. And then number 4, you got to be a guy that can come in and play on short notice. You have to have a little bit of that closer's mentality.
Yeah.
You know, I only got 20 pitches to warm up and I got to go in and win the game. If you have those 4 things, and it's rare that you find somebody with that ability, then you have the perfect backup quarterback. We did in Buffalo with Frank Reich.
Yeah. And perhaps the biggest issue there would be health.